Welcome to the Masterminds podcast channel, brought to you by DonorSearch, a leader in prospect research tools and analytics. And your host, one of America's top philanthropic experts and fundraising consultants, Jay Frost.
Taylor Shanklin, or T-Shanks, as she's sometimes known on social media, is a speaker, podcast host, and marketing leader in the nonprofit sector. With 13 years experience in nonprofit marketing and technology, Taylor serves as Vice President of Marketing at Pursuant, a full-service fundraising agency that leverages analytics and insights to help organizations change the world. She has served over 100 organizations on both national and local levels, often from her mountaintop retreat in North Carolina, where we spoke with her today. Hello, Taylor. Thank you for visiting with us today.
Hey, Jay. How are you?
I'm doing great. I understand you are there enjoying a rainy morning on Sugar Mountain. Is that right?
I am. It's rainy. I will say that I prefer the snow, but yes, we had a good snowstorm at the beginning of the week, and it was nice and clear. And now today's kind of gross, but it's okay.
Tell me a little bit about the place where you live and what brought you there.
Yeah, kind of an interesting story, actually. So I live in the Appalachian Mountains. A lot of people say Appalachian Mountains, and I learned living here, it's actually pronounced Appalachian in North Carolina. We moved here just this summer, and the story to get here is one that's probably a little bit unique. In 2018, my husband and I set out on the road with our two kids. They were They were 7 and 5 at the time. They're now 9 and 6, almost 7. And we just got on the road and said, "Hey, let's go see all 50 states in a year."
Mm-hmm.
And hopped in our Honda Pilot and just started kind of driving places. We were living in Austin. So I'm originally born and raised in Austin, Texas. We lived in different parts of Texas and had been, back in Austin for a little time then. And I think we were growing increasingly annoyed by the traffic and the real estate expense and the way that we had just seen the city changing. It's still a great city and I love it, and I'll probably live there again someday. But I think for raising kids, we said it wasn't the best fit at the moment. So we got out on the road and we started just exploring the rest of the country. And we literally got to all 50 states within 6 months.
Wow.
It sounds a little hectic and chaotic. He was not working. He's a consultant and he had free time at the time. He was trying to just actually use this time to spend it with the kids and stay home and focus on them. And I work remotely, so we worked it out that we just always made sure I had my laptop and a Wi-Fi connection. And I got really creative in how and where I worked, and it opened up our eyes. We came through this area and loved it. And so after that, we came back again for a vacation. We came to ski, and then one day we were here to ski, and I saw a house for sale, and I said, "Hey, we should go look at that house." And it turned into a thing, and then we decided to move here. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey.
So you have a new home, but you've also seen the whole country. How did that experience of driving around kind of change you guys and your family and your relationship to work too, I imagine?
Yeah, God, I mean, quite a bit. It's funny being on this podcast, and I wasn't really necessarily expecting to talk about it, but it's fun that we are, because I was just listening to the intro of a podcast that I'm producing and about to put out, which is more about how, I've adopted a more minimalist lifestyle through all of this, and I've really actually changed the way that I approach the world and in my thinking and my day to day a lot because of that journey. Um, we learned that we don't need that much to be happy. I think that, like many of us in our society here in America and probably other parts of the Western world, there's just this general idea that, we want to keep up with the Joneses and do this and that. And chasing money is going to make us happy. And we've been there, we've done that, we've been down that road before, and we weren't happy. My husband and I, we didn't have a good marriage during that time when we were just chasing money and the big house and all of that. And getting out on the road with our kids, it helped us to get to know each other a lot more. It helped us learn that we're happier through experiences than we are with things and stuff. And it also taught us that we shouldn't wait to chase adventure. There's a lot of different places to live in this world that are very cool. We're
Mhm.
living here now. We probably won't live here forever. Like, we kind of learned that we're nomadic and that we like that. We think that's interesting.
Mhm.
Um, in terms of work, like, I think a lot of people are probably like, wow, you must not work that much. No, I work a lot. Like, I put in a lot of time into my job and my career. And, but I've just learned that I don't think you have to be in an office to be effective.
Mhm.
I'm lucky to work at a company that is very supportive of having a distributed team. And so a lot of people in our company live and work in a lot of different places. And, we still feel highly connected because we use things like video calls, and we talk frequently. And so it's taught me that you can be effective in different environments like that. I think you just have to figure out what works for you to find your best way to focus on the things that are actually going to matter and make you happy and give you oxygen and move the ball forward, whether that's in your job or your personal life or whatever.
There's an interesting piece to that also, in that we work with all these organizations that are trying to bring some kind of change or transformation to whatever their mission is. And um, many of those organizations, perhaps they're going through that same kind of soul searching about what's the way that we can have the best impact, and also what's the business model for making that happen, including where do people work? How do they work with one another? How do they communicate? Are you seeing some of the things that um, that you've personally experienced as you've gone through this kind of transformation and change also happening within the client community, the organizations that you serve through Pursuant and that you've worked with across the nonprofit sector around the country?
I'm starting to see it more. I still think the concept of working in remote environments is a challenge for them. And I think it's a challenge for them in their head. Um, I get the importance of having a team all together, and getting that FaceTime. And sometimes you do just need to get in a room and like hash things out in person, and that does make a difference.
Mhm.
But I am starting to see some clients like open up. I mean, you see, and this has happened over the course of several years of different working with different nonprofit organizations, having things like even just starting with Flex Fridays or something like that, where you allow people to work from home one day a week. I think that's a good way to start it and
Mhm.
test it. The thing I think about working remotely is, let's say you're managing people, if they're not performing and producing results, you're going to know pretty quickly.
Mhm.
Um, it's also not for everyone. Some people need that office environment, I think, to feel motivated and like they're going and they're around people. For me, I have found, this is just my personality, I actually get a lot better work done when I'm able to do it in the place I want to do it. And I don't know if that's like a selfish thing or whatever, but I've worked in office environments and I've worked remotely, and I do better work when I am able to work from wherever I want to work. Um, and so I think as organizations think about this concept, and companies are thinking about this concept more, I just really think it comes down to get the best people for the job who vibe well with your team, who have good track records, and who are constant learners. I think that's important. I think if you find those people and then you support them to work in the environment that works best for them, that's how you're going to get the best product, the best work product out of your people. And that's what
Mm.
I've learned about myself. And that's what I've learned about how I think about hiring if I need to hire anyone to do a job. And that's what I think organizations, nonprofits need to wrap their mind around. A bit more as they do think about this new environment.
One thing you didn't talk about right there, but you devote so much of your life to is communicating, just like you're doing right now, uh, very authentically, personally, but directly. And I wonder, especially when you're talking about that distributive model of staff and organizations trying to do their work well. In addition to all the things you just mentioned, how we communicate together must be especially important, especially when people aren't in the same space. Can you talk a little bit about the role communications play for you, especially as you've found yourself traveling all over and often being far away from the people you're working with directly?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love that question. And I am kind of an open book and a truth teller, I would say. I've just learned to be very upfront with people and very direct. I It's interesting because I think it's something that's hard to do for a lot of people, and I'm not sure why. I mean, I guess it used to be hard for me to do too. If I'm being really honest, I mean, it's something that my, marriage counselor helped us work through, like just being more direct and saying what's on your mind, because you're not helping anyone if you're not just actually being direct and upfront. And so when we translate that into the work environment, something that's interesting at Pursuant that my team there has really adopted is this practice of radical candor. I don't know, Jay, have you ever heard of that book? A woman, Kim Scott, wrote it, and she talks about radical candor and this whole framework that she's come up with to help uh, employers and employees have better, more productive, and candid conversations with each other. Have you heard of it or read it?
No, no, I haven't.
It's a really good one. And so we put that into practice at our organization. In fact, my boss, Becca, she's the one who really sort of latched onto it and actually helped to kind of roll it out company wide. And so it gives us a framework for having those candid conversations and for just knowing that it's okay if we're upfront with each other. So we
Right.
have this culture where we're like, just be upfront. Don't beat around the bush. Don't hide what you're actually thinking. It's a safe environment. We make people feel like it's actually a safe environment to say what's really on their mind. And that actually helps break down the walls when you do have that remote team.
Mhm.
The other thing about that is you're not in person. And so pretty much every call we do is a video call. And that helps because you can read body language,
Sure.
and there are instances where you'll read someone's body language and they're saying one thing and you're on a video call and you're reading their body language and you're like, and you call it out and you say, hey, your body language is telling me something else is going on. What's going on? Let's dig into that. And so, uh, radical candor is something that has helped us as a team. We just cut through the BS, to be honest, and it's made us more productive in a distributed environment. Now, a lot of people are at headquarters in Dallas, but there are many of us that are in different parts of the country, and that's something that I think over the last, I would say, year and a half, we've been really practicing and working into the way we work with each other. Has made a big difference, and it's something that I use and practice every day in my relationships with friends, in the thought leadership that I put out when I'm up speaking in front of a group of people. It's like, let's just actually be real here. And what I've learned is people appreciate that so much. It's not going to make best friends with everyone. And that's another thing that it's like you have to kind of be reflective and say, hey, not everyone in this world is going to like me or agree with me or like what I say if I'm being upfront with them about it. But if you speak your truth and you show up and you live and work authentically, in the long run, you're going to get better results and you're going to be happier as a person with yourself.
I've
I
got to
feel like
ask
this has turned into a therapy session.
Well, I've got to ask you, when we talked about this in the context of this flash class that you held recently, we talked about social media. And when you talk about radical candor, there's a lot of radical conversation, and some of it candid, some of it maybe not as authentic as we'd like, occurring, across the spectrum of all the social networks. And I'm wondering, as you're thinking about how to apply the same principles that you are applying, obviously, to your life and among colleagues and with your clients, what can we talk to nonprofits about? How can we encourage nonprofits to be authentically themselves across these networks in a way that's productive, so that the social media ends up not being just another big megaphone, but instead a tool for real, honest, productive conversation in pursuit of mission?
Yeah, I love that. And I want to make one caveat to radical candor. Radical candor does not mean you can act like a jerk, right? Like you're not gonna get let's just call that out because I want to make sure people don't misinterpret this. Radical candor is just being upfront about what's on your mind and not beating around the bush, not side skirting the issue, right? It doesn't give you a free pass to just treat everyone like a jerk. And I say that and make that caveat because I think in the social media context that you just asked about, people kind of can get on there and be trolls and act like jerks. And then that makes it not fun and it makes it not productive, to your point, right? So, one of my recommendations about using social media as an engagement tool, and I'm glad you called it that, that's the way I think about it, is I think we need to get over fear. And I
Mm,
think social media and engaging there and having real dialogue could be a way to help people start to take the first step to get over fear.
mm,
And I'll I'll dig into that a little bit more and what I mean by that. I think a lot of times, and I just put a radically candid post up on LinkedIn maybe a week or two ago, and it kind of like blew up and got a lot more engagement than I ever expected or I normally get. But it was about the nonprofit sector and innovation and the
mm,
fact that I think too often we're stuck in this cycle where, I mean, corporate America is doing its thing and the nonprofit sector is doing its thing. And the two aren't talking to each other enough. They're not working together enough. There are a ton of amazing companies that are for profit companies, like the one that I work for, that service nonprofits and they are innovating, right? We're trying to help pull the sector forward and adopt more innovation and the way we communicate with our supporters and the technologies that we use and everything like that. But I'll go back to that fear. I think there's a fear often to try new things in the nonprofit sector. I think for profits have a lot less fear to try things that might fail. I think nonprofit professionals have a lot of fear to try new things. It might be that they're fearful of trying a different way of, their fundraising communications, or they're fearful of trying a new technology because if it fails, I might lose my job, right? And it, they've got every right to fear those things because those are big things. But I think that having more dialogue about these things and engaging on these topics in social media is a good way to just get a conversation going, if that makes any sense.
Sure. Maybe a little radical bravery to go along with the radical candor.
Yes, radical bravery. I love that.
I you know, I know you found a new home where you live. Sounds like a wonderful place where you and even your family and maybe even your dog can go skiing. That's for a conversation for another time. Um,
We
but
haven't found keys yet, but we're still thinking through that.
no board. So you've got the home, and you've obviously got a home at the company where you work, and you serve, work with so many people, helping them. But you have been a kind of nomad, not just in that 6 month traveling, but also, your whole career, you've been moving to different things, different opportunities, serving different people, working with different people. Where's your journey next?
Well, that's a great question. I am a nomad, and it's funny. I had to just finally. I think I used to struggle with that. You know, I used to struggle with the fact that, like, I'll just be totally real. Like, I get bored quickly, and so I like to find new projects and
Mhm.
things to do quickly. And in my career, it's actually been fantastic because I've been able to make little pivots every few years and learn different things and work with different types of organizations, and it's been a ton of fun and it's helped me grow. One of the next things that I'm working on, and this is really a personal project, I'm writing a book. And so a lot of what we talked about today, I want to help more people work through themselves. How do you get over that fear? How do you practice that radical bravery, which, by the way, Jay, we're totally using now? How do you know, think through what's the most important thing in your life to go after, right? I shared with you that at one point in time we were chasing money and we were miserable, right? So we figured that out, that doesn't make us happy anymore. So I'm writing a book about this journey, and I am about to release a personal podcast on this journey, which it's called Soar, and it's about helping individuals achieve liftoff, focusing on the things that matter to really lift off and fly and spread their wings. And my hope for that is to just be a personal source of inspiration to anyone who needs a little help taking that first step to kind of lift off and fly. And so that's just something that I'm working on right now. It's like a little personal side thing that I'm doing, but it gives me energy and oxygen, and I uh, I like doing it. It's also been really cool because I've interviewed some amazing guests from all different industries. So it's not just nonprofit focused, but it's looking at people from all different walks of life who have a really interesting story of
Mhm.
how they kind of figured out what their passion is and then how they focused on it and then how they got to their big goal. And so it's kind of like this goal setting thing that's just really big on my mind right now. And my hope is to help take that into nonprofits too. All right, so how do we learn from these people in all these different industries and how they focused and how they got over the fear? How do we do that now for our sector? And so that's just some kind of long-term thinking on where I'd like to maybe go with it.
Thank you so much, Taylor. Really loved hearing you talk about where you've come from and where you're going, and all the oxygen and lift you're bringing to all of us here in the sector and beyond.
It warms my heart when people tell me that. Sometimes I put things out and I'm like, oh, might hate this. I don't know. Like, like you totally have that imposter syndrome where you're like, should I be saying this? But then someone will send me a note, even if it's just one person. They're like, wow, like, thanks for saying that. You really helped me today. And I really needed that today. And that is what just keeps me going every day right now. And